Okay, here we go.
Yeah, so we do a lot of M&A advisory work. That's our core practice. We're currently representing two publicly traded Israeli companies listed on the NASDAQ on the buy side. We've done a bunch of work on the private placement front with Israeli startups. So our business is really built on our domain expertise in tech. We have an unwavering commitment to our clients and sort of a history of unbiased advice and exceptional service, and I think that translates into some of the work we've done. Today, for example, we announced a $22 million transaction with a client with which we've done 2 transactions just over the last couple of years. So what I'm going to talk about today is what it takes for a startup to be successful in the tech space, and what are some of the common pitfalls in terms of raising capital from venture capital investors. So there's 4 key ingredients that are necessary for a startup to be successful in terms of both raising money and execution. One is you need a great idea. So the key to this is really a founder or a group of founders that have true passion for their idea, a business that's difficult to replicate, and a strong mission that inspires the firm's culture. The best ideas typically are terrible at the beginning. If you look at an idea like Uber, for example, or even Facebook, it wasn't obvious at the beginning that these companies would become enormous businesses, but they did. So a lot of times the really good sounding ideas are ideas that a lot of people are already working on. You got to really think about the potential market and how it's going to evolve over time. You need a market that's going to be very, very significant 5 or 10 years into the future. And think about the timing for starting your company. Are you really at the key inflection point in terms of this market taking off, or are you too early? Sometimes you'll see startups flounder for years because they come to a great market opportunity, but they start way too early. And ultimately, you got to be able to explain your story in one sentence that's easy to understand. So one of the big concepts right now in Silicon Valley is product market fit. If you read Mark Anderson, for example, from Anderson Horowitz, he talks about this a lot, and this is a concept that a lot of VCs have picked on. So it's not enough to just have a great product, but you need a great product that fits into the market you're targeting and satisfies a critical market need. So how do you know that you have product market fit? Typically, when you have good product market fit, usage will begin to grow by word of mouth. So that's sort of a key component here. And ultimately, if people like something, really like something, they're going to tell their friends and their colleagues about it, and that's how you're going to snowball your user base. And ultimately, it's better to build a product that a small number of users really love as opposed to a large number of users like, because it's easier to build from there as a starting point and generate passionate users for your product that will serve as product evangelists for you and go out and talk to other people about it. Next slide. Another key component of this equation here is building a great team. So investors really favor companies that have multiple co-founders as opposed to one founder. That deleverages risk. Co-founder relationships are critical. You really have to be very careful who you build your business with, because it's got to be able to endure the test of time. And it's key to, 1, work with people you've got a long history with. 2, avoid hiring employees too early. Really what you want to do is hire people as late in the process as possible, and hire people who really believe in your mission to help define your company culture and help you succeed. Next slide. And ultimately, the most important piece of the puzzle is great execution. So a lot of entrepreneurs are successful because they outwork their competition ultimately. That's what one of the keys to success is. And you want to continuously de-risk your business. You want to de-risk your team risk, your product risk, your technical risk, your launch risk, market acceptance risk, revenue risk, cost of sales risk. So as you build the business, the lower the risk at each of these levels, the more highly likely it will be that an investor will step up and give you capital. So they're constantly, investors, what they're doing is they're weighing what are the potential returns from this investment versus what are the risks involved. The lower the risk, the easier it is for you to raise money. So you want to move quickly and demonstrate growth and momentum so that you can rapidly attract funding. So how do you accelerate growth? One is you want to have a product that really meets users' needs and really capture what is the essence of the needs that are being met for those must-have users. And then you want to develop an economic model, a business model that allows you to rapidly acquire users as quickly as possible and then streamline it so it's a repeatable process that allows you to acquire customers on a scalable basis. So you got to test multiple approaches to acquiring customers, determine what's the optimal approach, and use that to really rapidly expand the business. So let's talk a little bit about fundraising, which I'm sure is the area that interests you the most. So what does it take to create a viable roadmap to raise capital from VCs? In a single year, a typical VC partner is exposed to over 5,000 pitches, looks closely at 600 to 800 deals, and ultimately invests in 1 or 2 transactions. So it's a highly, highly competitive process. So the 3 key criteria that we've identified in our experience in terms of raising capital from VCs is 1, you want to be the natural leader in the market or technology area you're going after. And this must be an area that people are really paying attention to. It must be an area that is front and center in VCs' minds as an area of interest. You want to have a finished, functioning product, and you want to demonstrate substantial customer or revenue growth. So if you have all 3 of these elements lined up, you can very easily raise money. The challenge for startups is very often they're missing 1 or more of these pieces, and that's what they struggle with until they achieve a position where the capital comes to them easily. Next slide. So what if you don't meet these 3 criteria? What can you do to sort of mitigate the situation? So as we mentioned earlier, you want to go after markets which have significant scale. So the market must have meaningful traction and be a popular theme for VCs to invest in. And it's not uncommon in these markets to have multiple players going after the same opportunity. You want to acquire customers as quickly as possible. So in the consumer space, and I believe a lot of companies here are really focused on the consumer space, you want to drive a freemium model and build your user base through grassroots campaigns and individual adoption. In the enterprise space, it's a little different. What you're really targeting is building brand recognition in terms of getting customers that are very well known and very well respected to adopt your product. So customer and revenue traction are probably the most important criteria for VCs. If you can adequately demonstrate that, it becomes a lot easier to get meetings and raise capital. And also, you want to, if you're addressing a market with established players, you have to radically disrupt the economics. So there you can look at Uber as an example. They've completely changed the economics of the car, the car ride business. And then ultimately, the other aspect here, ideally, is you want to develop proprietary intellectual property or a defensible market position. So technology and patents can be very, very effective in terms of securing your first mover advantage and giving you a defensible position. And ultimately, proprietary technology allows you to maintain your lead longer and make you a more compelling investment proposition for investors. And here are 8 mistakes. I'm going to discuss 8 mistakes you want to avoid when pitching investors.
Only? Yeah.
Well, 8 of the big ones. There are many, many mistakes you can make. So some of the key mistakes that you can make. One is don't make the same pitch to everyone. You want to really understand your audience. You want to understand what their target investment criteria are. You want to really research them thoroughly and understand what makes them say yes or no to projects. And these days, a lot of the VCs have their own blogs. So they document in detail their deal process, their thinking methodology, etc. And that can be invaluable to you in terms of determining how to proceed with a VC. You want to avoid showing multiple business models. You'll see a lot of entrepreneurs who will say, well, if we don't succeed in building our revenue base by charging using Model A, we'll use Model B. Now that's a risk for the VC because that's going to show on their end a lack of focus on your part. They want to know that you're committed to an approach and you've really thought it through clearly. And then you don't want to avoid discussing risks. So you want to address any issues or objections head on, explicitly identify the risks, and explain how you're going to manage those risks. You want to share proactively with the VCs to build trust. And a common mistake entrepreneurs make is that they say, we have no competition. More often than not, that's just not true. Usually there is some kind of competitive offering. So you want to avoid that. You want to identify any competitive solution that may be very far, even in terms of value proposition from what you're offering, and identify them and say, well, these are the other competitive offerings, but for these and these specific reasons, we are far better. So if there's a valuable market opportunity, ultimately investors understand that other people will stumble on it and will be trying to take advantage of it the same way you are. So it's hard for people to be convinced that there is no competition. Next slide. So the other thing here is to think long-term about your financing needs. One advice we always give our clients is the second you close your round of financing, you want to be thinking about the next round. Because raising capital is a lengthy process. Typically, it takes at least 6 months to raise capital from VCs from start to finish. Sometimes it could go on 12 months to actually make a process successful. So if you run out of money, your business will fail. So that is not an area you want to delay. You want to focus on that right away. Another key mistake to avoid is you want to show a focus on bottoms-up data. A lot of companies, when they pitch investors, will focus on the total market opportunity and say, look, our total addressable market is $10 billion, but they really fail to show how they're going to address that market from a grounds-up approach, saying, well, we're going to acquire X customers in year 1, Y customers in year 2, and this is how our user base is ultimately going to grow. Another risk here is you have to be careful about the people in your network reviewing your ideas and just approving them. You want to find the people who are going to criticize your ideas and challenge them and use them as a sounding board to strengthen your pitch to the VCs. You want to have reasonable numbers and assumptions that pass the blink test. So what that is really referring to is we see a lot of first-time entrepreneurs that financial models that oversimplify things and say, well, we're going to have a $200 million business in 2 years. Well, if you look at historical precedent, that's not very realistic. So you want to have a realistic ramp of what the business looks like and how it might grow over time. And ultimately, another key point here is to not only focus on your ideal investors, but also approach likely investors. And what that helps you do is, if you can get momentum from the likely investors and you get term sheets from them, that allows you to pressure your ideal investor to step up and make an investment. A couple of other key points here. You want to clearly articulate your investment thesis up front. We talked about having a single sentence that clearly explains your business and your value proposition. You want to pitch by analogy. So you'll see people saying, well, we're doing Uber for the marine market, or we're doing LinkedIn for the consumer e-commerce market, or whatever it might be. So those types of analogies work really well with investors. You want to express your competitive advantage very clearly, whether it's your technology, your business strategy, your product. You want to be very decisive about that. And you want to ideally show your product. So if you have a mock-up or if you have a demo that's built, you want to show that to the investor and demonstrate that you've built something that works, that's viable. Ultimately, you want to get the investor to a point where they realize themselves that this is a great opportunity. In terms of recommendations with respect to funding, so I believe most of the companies here are not really on the tech-heavy side of things. So for SaaS, internet, and media companies, you don't necessarily need a large amount of capital up front. What you can do is determine what's the minimum amount of capital that allows you to reach some key attainable milestones that show investors that you've made progress, and seek to raise that capital to hit those milestones and then go back to investors for the next round. Any questions?
Can we get a presentation?
I'm sorry?
Can we get a presentation?
Yes, absolutely. Okay. Thank you for your time.